Lee is with us this evening. He's going to give us, we're going to have this more discussion on the proposed zoning district designations. Lee, it's all yours.
Thanks, Al. So I guess I wanted to explain to you guys first sort of the changes that we've made in response to the conversations we held while we were looking at the maps while we were down there, over there, I guess, and actually up there. Kim, have you got the district framework up?
Yes.
So the first thing you'll notice is that most of the changes are down at the lower end of the scale. The shorter buildings are the ones which are the most likely to be immediately abutting neighborhoods, and these are clearly where we have our greatest concerns over transitions. And so we agreed that a three-story flat roof building was not acceptable in traditional low-scale nodes. And so you'll see that we have converted that to a 2.5-story district. And just to make sure we're all on the same page, the half-story in this instance is a pitched roof. It could have dormers that aren't facing the residential neighborhood, and would allow for a habitable floor in the roof form. So there could literally be 3 floors inside the building, but when you're standing outside, it looks like 2 stories and then a roof. And in fact, there did not seem to be a place for a traditional commercial building, a flat roof commercial building at 3 stories. So we have, at this point, deleted that second district. So there's only a 2.5-story traditional low-scale node, and then a 3-story suburban low-scale node. It's a little more tolerable, at least in my mind, as you move to the suburban site, where we're moving the building a little bit back from the curb. You know, it's not so tightly located up to the street in that Main Street style. And so maybe it's acceptable in that setting to have a 3-story flat roof building. Then the other thing that we did was brought the height of the 4-story building in the next set in medium scale node down. And this was principally a discussion of the area immediately west of the village that drove this desire to have that one at 3.5 stories. And again, this 3.5 stories, I think we agreed, could either be in the roof form of a pitched roof, or could be a substantially set back top story that was not really visible from the sidewalk. So that the building appeared to be 3 stories, but could actually have a 4-story component sitting on the roof, if you will. So either a pitched roof with habitable space in it, or a steps back form. And so the only traditional models then here now are 3 and 3.5. There's no longer a traditional 4-story.
Lee,
And then, yes.
we have a question.
Good evening, Lee. It's Ramona. In regards to the half stories, you're measuring from the pitch part, which and we had this diagram on building height in our packet.
Yes.
And
It's on the next page.
right then, it's like to the peak of the pitch. That's where you're measuring the height, not like a straight front. So the 42 feet wouldn't be like likely if there's this 3-story building across from Waynesville South that's straight up and down. So this 42 is more of a pitched, which gives that half story.
Yes.
Right, the 2.5. That's where we're measuring from.
I think where we want to talk about this and decide whether that 3-story of height is acceptable in the suburban low-scale node. Because I know that you had raised the question about, I believe it's about $10,000.
But let's go back to, I need to go back to the question, if you can, so.
It's where it's being measured from, like when I'm looking at this building height sheet, the 42, that's that peak of that roof there, and it's not, which doesn't make it so foreboding looking to me, as a straight, flat front, the 42.
Lee, did you
Right.
catch that? Just trying
No,
to,
I'm missing something there.
yeah, so just trying to understand on the 2.5-story pitched roof example that you have, the height is measured from the peak of the pitched roof, right?
Correct.
Right, I just want to double check that, and it's not a flat surface. Thank you.
Yeah, so, and unfortunately, it means that we may have to regulate the minimum pitch of the roof, because on a wider building, you'll be tempted to do a flat roof form to get taller stories. And the flat roof form, I think, is something that we don't want to see. You don't have many low-pitched pitched roofs up in that part of the world. So we're going to have to be careful. But yes, that is the way that we intend to measure the pitch. And you can fit the full 2.5 stories with a habitable third story in that 40 feet. So it's 7 feet taller than the adjacent residential district would be at 35.
Lee, this is Carl Montante. I have a question on the uses. I noticed in the suburban medium scale node 4 and traditional center 5, traditional hotel appears that it would not be allowed. I'm curious why.
It seems that the majority of the hotels that you've been getting have been taller, and they've been 5 and more stories. So we looked at all of your recent hotels, and they were taller. And so what we've said is, yes, you could still have a hotel, but it would be something, that right now, the moment we're calling boutique hotels, it would be something smaller. It's a discouragement of someone asking for an additional story of height in those settings in order to get a full traditional hotel in place.
So if a Hyatt hotel, a 5-story Hyatt hotel wanted to locate in a traditional center 5 parcel, that wouldn't be allowable. I don't understand why. There's a lot of flag hotels that are 5 stories tall.
That one could be allowed, and I think you need to look at where the traditional center 5 are and make that decision. One of them happens to be in University Plaza, and that does have a hotel of that height in it. So perhaps we should have a black dot on that and allow for the hotel in traditional center 5 as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So the only other thing that I was going to point out on this chart is that it was very clear that we also needed a lower height traditional corridor district for the very shallow sites on the corridor. And so we've created the equivalent of the low-scale node for use on the smaller traditional corridors. And part of that was places like Bailey and others where the shallow parcels are, again, going with the pitched roof form that perhaps emulates the adjacent residential neighborhood a little more effectively. So that's the manipulation of the chart that I think for the most part we agreed to while working on the notes that were completed with the committee's help. our 2 nights of struggling through the table. So, if you could, Kim, put up the spreadsheet.
Sure.
So, we now have a big spreadsheet. We have, there are a total of 68 centers that need to get categorized.
Hey, Lee.
They're already categorized.
Lee,
Yes.
just one moment, a second. The only traditional Center 5 that I see is University Plaza. Right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I think before we go any further, I wonder if we can go back to Carl's question and just make a determination there. Did you go to the hotel there? Yeah. That, everybody good with that? Okay. So, resolve it. Get the table split, so it's on the map. So, any more discussion on that one? So right now, the only place that traditional Center 5 would apply would be the University Plaza on Main Street, across from the
Yes.
South Campus.
Not to say that in the future, someone might not ask to change the zoning on some other location, and then this would have to be considered, but given that it is designated for 5 stories, and 5-story is kind of the size that many of your hotels have been, I think it's appropriate to add the hotel to that.
I don't know, I mean, if you're gonna allow a 5-story boutique hotel, why wouldn't you allow a 5-story high Hilton or Marriott?
Also, if you allow 5 stories as far as the rest of these items are concerned, why wouldn't you put a hotel in there too?
Why limit it?
Yeah, I don't understand that either.
So the other 5-story
Well-
areas.
between traditional and suburban?
Well, can you kind of describe what the difference is between a boutique hotel and a regular hotel?
So to us, it's the number of rooms that we ought to, in the lower intensity settings, manage the number of rooms allowed in a hotel.
Daniel Wachowski, so, assuming we permit the 5-story hotel in traditional Center 5, then that hotel, as far as its placement, will have to be a maximum of 20 feet from Main Street. So we're gonna have a frontage hotel. And
If
so-
it is the front of the property. Now, mind you, had the 2 towers been placed fronting the property where you had met your build 2 already with the 2 residential mixed-use towers, the hotel could be placed anywhere behind them. But yes, if you wanted the high visibility location, the hotel would be up to the street just like the window.
And that would be a mandate. So if we were to allow a hotel in traditional Center 5, and if we're looking at University Plaza, the hotels would have to be positioned along Main Street and no further back than 20 feet. Period.
Well,
Correct?
so there is a lot of room on that site. So that site extends, it's quite deep. So the existing hotel location would be allowed, provided that you are also building up to the street in front of it.
Can you explain that, because it doesn't make sense to me? I mean,
I think you're in the wrong place.
Well, if you
Okay.
look, who is, me,
Yeah,
or?
are you on Main Street near the South Campus of UB?
Yeah, it's the 2 buildings we talked about in front of the hotel, right?
That's,
no, this is Tops Market and a large retail plaza along the west side.
Number 23.
We might be referring to this.
Hold on,
yeah, that's.
hold on. I don't have
29.
my number.
29, Lee.
Lee, it's the plaza that has the tops all the way to the back. And you commented on the fact that the only reason it was set like that is so you could read the sign. There's nothing in front of large parking lot.
29, yeah, so 29 is definitely a challenging site. So we had a conversation, including with some of the developers in the room, about this one. And everybody was quite convinced that something in the back would suffer if it were designed traditionally. On the other hand, everything else around that site is going to be designed traditionally and pulled up to the street. So it seemed rather difficult to switch that one to any other pattern. So I mean, it's a very, very tough site.
So with that said, and you're putting a maximum setback affecting this site, are we going to define what is a road, whether it's private? I mean, if we're going to create a grid network on a large parcel like this, would these setbacks be applicable to just a public right-of-way, or what might be called a private right-of-way that the developer creates for a block or a grid setup on a large parcel?
Yeah, so only those portions that were necessary to meet our block standards. So let's say that this site required one road, splitting it in two. It would be only that street that you would have to pull up to. And yes, internally as well as external to the site.
To go back to Dan's comment a moment ago, if I understood it correctly, we've got a maximum setback of 20 feet. So if it's 20 feet from Main Street, for example, do we
Correct.
have another situation where we could have a fairly significant building up on Main Street with a limited setback, such as has been mentioned here, the Mosey or the Wyndham? And it would appear as if that would be the case, at least as I'm reading this.
Lee, you still there?
Yes? Was that a question? I thought it was a statement.
Well, I guess I don't need an answer because I know the answer, right? So the question really is whether that's a form that we would want to have in that location.
When the discussion was had on this site, what Lee had recommended is if you were to redevelop the site, you would put a road in. Now, whether the road is public or private is open for discussion. But everything would be based off that road, would not be based off Main Street. If I remember the conversation correct, I think that's the way it went. We talked about that.
It would actually be based off of both. So you would pull the front along Main Street out to that edge, and your internal spine would also follow those setbacks. Not necessarily 100%. We're not talking about building out that internal road to a super high percentage, but any building that did sit in there would come to that road. So do you happen to be looking at the aerial view
Yes.
of that site?
Yes.
Okay, so just imagine the L-shaped building on the left, for example, being pulled towards the center spine there, enters the parking area, and also being pulled up to where it was along the street edge of Main Street as well. That would be an example of an appropriate building placement.
And I guess what we're saying here is that could be up to 5 stories high.
Yes.
Okay.
As a general question, I thought that we were leaving the hotels in the suburban centers and quarters, and not in the traditional.
And we clearly have the ability to take hotel out of this as an option if we don't want to see it here. We can do that with any of the districts. And it's just that this would accommodate the bulk and mass of a hotel. the question of whether it's appropriate for the use of a hotel is one that you guys will have to help us answer.
Well, to Dale's point earlier, if we're going to allow a 5-story apartment building, why wouldn't we allow a 5-story hotel? Especially across the street from a college campus, where there might be a market for that kind of thing.
So in this case, Dan, I'm gonna go back to your comment earlier. It's perhaps not the height, but the maximum setback.
Maximum setback, and I guess we'll be looking at transitioning again.
I guess my concern will be not necessarily, it'll be building placement as well as transitioning to the sensitive receptors to the west, with the residences and along the east side.
Any comments from the committee, and where do you want to go from here? All right, let me put it,
I think the
go ahead.
setback is important, because I think the setback is important because I don't think we want a box like we have now on Main Street that's right out, and that's probably not more than 15 or 20 feet from the curb.
You talking about the Mosey?
Just to make sure I'm on track here, we're really talking about form more than anything else, right? Because whether it's a hotel or apartment, it's 5 stories, it's the form that we're talking about, correct? And, once again, the other distinction I draw is the difference between, I know we're using the Mosey as an example in the room here, but that's a large project squeezed down less than 2 acres. This is a much larger piece of property. Doesn't mean you can't still put a massive building on it, but if you drop the Mosey on that site and you put it in the center, it would not clearly be as imposing as it is currently on its very small parcel. So we have to keep that in mind. That unfortunately didn't offer any solutions here, but I just want to make sure I understood.
Something else. You pointed out the fact that we're talking about a large parcel of land that can accommodate it if we wanted it to be able to be accommodated. Right. Yep. Well, the other thing in my mind too is that there's not really a lot of encroachment on residences here either. There's an embankment in the back that really prevents from getting too close to the homes that are back there. There are apartments essentially that are back there. So, again, I don't understand. My concern still is the same. If you're going to allow 5 stories of anything, why you are eliminating anything particular? So, any other comments before we take a vote? Okay, I'm struggling in my own mind how to present the question. It's basically around...
The first question is, did we do the comp plan correctly? So did we designate it correctly with the comp plan designation?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that's in question. I think more in question is the one particular type, is the hotel. I think everything else seems to be agreeable. So let's vote on whether or not we think a hotel is appropriate or inappropriate on that particular site. I think that's what it boils down to. Anybody disagree with that?
Well, point of clarification, I'm going to respectfully disagree with Lee that a boutique hotel is commonly defined as a hotel with a limited number of rooms. Boutique hotels generally are those hotels that are not flagged or not prototypical hotels. They tend to be independent, uniquely designed, and they can be 500 rooms or 50 rooms. I think there's a large audience that construes that boutique hotels are some of these short B&B type hotels, but they don't have to be. So I guess I just don't understand the distinction between a boutique hotel and a hotel. If one can be 5 stories, the other can be 5 stories, as Carl pointed out. If the difference is because one's got a Marriott flag on it, and the other one doesn't, I'm not sure I understand the distinction between the two. So if we're voting to eliminate hotels, in my opinion, you're really voting to eliminate both, because I'm not sure what the distinction is between a boutique and a flagged hotel in this context, unless somebody explains it better than I've heard so far.
So Lee, let me ask you a question. On this site, if somebody wanted to put up what you're classifying as a boutique hotel and it were only 3 stories, would that be acceptable?
Yes.
So what's the difference between a boutique hotel that's part of a Marriott Autograph Collection and a Marriott Courtyard Hotel that's 5 stories?
Did you hear that question?
So, to my mind, I don't care what the badge is, none of that matters at all. So let's take that out of here. And I know that by using the word boutique, we invoke that sense of either a high-end badge or a badge-free hotel. But to me, that doesn't matter. What we were trying to get at here probably would more accurately have been described as small hotel, and, I don't know, something more like full-service hotel. Although that immediately puts a bunch of ideas in people's heads too. But the idea was that there are hotels with less traffic and less impact that would be more acceptable immediately adjacent to a neighborhood, would perhaps act more like the apartment building that might also be allowed there. Maybe this doesn't matter at all. Maybe we're just saying hotel, yes or no, as a use, and maybe hotel stays in note instead of some of these other locations. All of those choices to me are on the table, and I did not hear as part of the prior market study work, which admittedly was focused on the office component of what's going on in town, but that work did look generally across a broad variety of things. It did not suggest that we're going to see a bunch of additional hotel growth. Doesn't mean we aren't going to get some, but I think thinking that every location that we say hotel is allowed will actually get a hotel might be a bit much. So, to me, there's the question of the bulk and the mass. If you're fine with the 5 stories, but you don't feel comfortable with that use in this physical location and with this form, meaning traditional form, that's fine. We can take out both boutique and full-service hotel out of that column. We can take out we can keep the small hotel, but not allow the big hotel. Any of those options to me is possible. I'm not sure there's a perfectly rational solution to this dilemma for this particular site.
Well, as it stands now, since boutique hotels are included in this as being permissible, that boutique hotel could be 5 stories.
Yeah, I think that yes, we're talking use, but the form that was mentioned earlier, 5-story building is a 5-story building. What you put in it is a different issue, and we've got these set up that there are setbacks from residential areas. We've got the protection for the taller buildings, so I think we're down to the question of whether you want a hotel of any type on this site, and I don't see any hotel that would get developed here putting any more traffic in the area than a residential facility, 5 stories tall. In either case, it may put less, because you'll have 1 car per room, basically, in a hotel, or if you have an apartment that's near the campus, you could have 5 cars, 4 cars. So it could get very heavy with residential there versus a hotel. So I would just add to that point, and David's point earlier, in my opinion, there's no difference. There shouldn't be a distinction between a boutique hotel and a hotel. If that use is allowable on a parcel, Just call it a hotel, and don't make that distinction.
I think that's what the question boils down to. Do we want a hotel? Forget about what type. Do we want a hotel? We do or we don't. That's really what it comes down to. As a category, right. So, I'm posing a question. How many people are in favor of having a hotel on this site? As a permitted use, whether it will happen or not, right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So hotels go in there, Lee, and there's not a distinction between boutique or hotel.
Okay, so then we need to look quickly at suburban medium-scale node 4, in which we have only the boutique. If we are only saying hotel, I just want to make certain, this is an area where the recently built hotels for you would not fit in the 4 stories. Do we still want to allow a hotel use, provided that it's within the 4 stories?
Well, if the focus is on form, building height, in other words, stories, let free enterprise and the use fit within the form. That's what we should be focusing on.
Well, this essentially goes back to the same question, except in this particular case, it's 4 stories, which is what is controlling the size.
There are 4-story hotels that are out there.
Yep. How do we feel about this one? We want to go through another long discussion on it, or do we want to, in suburban medium-scale node 4, allow hotels of any type? Yes, we do. How many people are in favor of yes, we do? I'm sorry? Okay, yep.
We're just distinguishing between what's again, boutique hotel or hotel or anything?
No, just a hotel. Yes, Ellen?
The reason I was for the possibility of a hotel or a similar-sized apartment building in what's now University Plaza is really that it's near public transportation, and I think it would be forward-looking to plan more dense development near public transportation, given that public transportation may expand, but it's going to be a public transportation hub with the buses and the rail there. Going further out into the town, I think that's different to me. I'm not saying I'm 100% against it, but it's hard to visualize University Plaza being anything other than it is, but I think it is possible to visualize it as having a completely different shape, and something 5 stories might not be obtrusive there at all.
So, the light, the beige, the pink area is the suburban medium scale node. Most of them are there.
I think one of those, what are we calling it, the suburban medium-scale nodes is 67? Is that accurate?
Yep.
All right. That encompasses the Cross Point site. And I can tell you that from our perspective, we've got about 7,000 people working at Cross Point and numerous businesses, and many of those businesses have questioned whether we plan on developing a hotel to help support those businesses when they have clients coming into town. So, we we would, like to be able to build a hotel there. And again, whether it's a boutique hotel or a flag hotel, shouldn't make a difference. The use would help, the business community that is located there.
Just looking at the map here for suburban medium scale, I'm looking at, 21, 54, 61, 67, 57, and 68. I agree with Carl that Cross Point would be a good place, but that would be about the only one of the suburban medium scale to put a hotel, four-story hotel.
I agree.
Anybody else?
There have been hotel proposed for fire departments at one time, so somebody thought there'd be a place for a hotel.
Keep in mind that all those sites, would have allowed a boutique hotel, four-story boutique hotel. So now, if we change our mind, we'd be changing it on the basis that it's no longer a boutique, but could be perhaps a flag hotel. Which, again, I don't see a relevant distinction there.
Lee, I think that's a valid point.
May I thought that we reclassified 68 Transit Millersport, and I would support maybe it's too late, but in view of its basically rural character out there and also the proximity to waterways, I think a heavy amount of development in that area would be a problem, and I guess I missed something because I thought we had removed it from that category.
Remember that? I don't either. I can't, Ellen, for the life of me, I can't remember that. Goes back to the previous question. You have it right in the plan.
Yep. Well, I think we need to come to a conclusion. Again, forgetting about what type of hotel, just hotel in general. Would you approve or disapprove suburban medium scale node for a hotel? Those in favor of approving it, please put your hand up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Disapprove? 1, 2, 3. I guess committee speaks. We approved it, but for a hotel. You got that, Lee?
So, no, yeah, you have to help me out there. It sounded like a typo, but it wasn't?
No. It was in favor of hotel.
Okay, so the next time you see this chart, it will not say boutique hotel, it will only say hotel, in that column. And the hotels only show up in that four-story district and in other five-story districts.
Right. Okay.
Thanks for that.
Yep.
So, Dan, help me out. Should we be going to some of the blue notes?
Yep, I think that's next.
So,
On this sheet, folks, there's blue notes off to the right, off to the margin on the right. There were comments from the committee that we want to address.
So, there were two areas that I thought are worth considering committee. And one of those was number 20, and the other was number 23. So if we could go to one of those on the aerial.
Oh, one second.
Yep. I'm going there myself.
I'm
So.
going to 20.
Okay. And 20, help me out, that's, I'm seeing Kaiser Cadillac in the courtyard by Marriott Buffalo.
Correct.
That's right?
Yep.
Okay. So the north side, I have no problem with this type and this designation. But what is tagged on my Google as Basil Resale Center on the south side, I had a little more trouble with this piece. And I wondered whether we didn't need to reduce the height from 5-story on the south side of Sheridan. In other words, literally split zone the center.
Well, particularly that south side abuts a lot of residences too. The north side does not. Comments?
I'd agree with that.
I'm seeing shakings of their heads. I think people are agreeing to the fact that it should be split.
On the south side of the road?
Pardon me?
Yeah.
Basil, yeah. Yep. Yep. I think you got consensus, Lee, it should be split.
Okay, so I'm going to make, since we do not have a center at 3 stories, the south side there is going to end up being suburban corridor 3. The other parcel where I had a similar concern was the Sheridan Gettsville Strip, which is listed at number 23. I believe it's just to the west.
Okay.
So, some of this was problematic. The neighborhood kind of sneaks in and out here, right? So, if you're looking where Northtown Hyundai is, I don't have any problem with the height designation being fairly tall, because back behind there looks like, ball fields and forests, and it's not housing. But if you look right at Gettsville Road, to the west side of Gettsville Road up along Sheridan, the commercial parcel is like the equivalent of one residential lot east coming back from Sheridan. And I wondered whether we don't have to take that piece and treat it differently from the other portions of the corridor. In other words, it doesn't seem like that can accommodate more than 3 stories, given the residential neighborhood. If we designate it for 5, the immediate desire would be to take out 1 or 2 houses back behind in order to achieve that height at that site.
Thoughts? Frank agrees, everybody agrees?
I agree.
Okay, you're right, we got consensus on your thoughts.
Okay, so we'll set that one as suburban corridor 3 as well, to go with the suburban corridor 5 on either side.
Okay.
Most of the other notes were drafting notes. So I think that I'm going to stop infusing my personal opinion on this and just share with you the spreadsheet that you have before you. Everything that's in red, we determined in my office. If there is only one implementing district, it is just white paper behind the red. If there is a choice in implementing district, for example, between 3 stories and 5 stories, there'll be a gray box behind the red. And what I'm hoping you might do tonight is look through some of those in which there was a choice and simply confirm the choice that we're offering you up. So in many cases, it would be a choice between, for example, 3 and 5 story corridor, for example. And the key reason that we differentiated those, if you look at the ones which have been differentiated for 5 stories, was the depth of the site. And so where the site depths are, 200 feet or greater than that, they can handle the 5-story buildings. When they are shallower, when they're 150 feet or less, they can only handle the shallower buildings. So that was mostly our thinking as we were working our way through these. And I think that you will likely confirm the same designations that we selected. But I think that's your task for now. And I'll ask Dan, do you think, Dan, you guys can work through this and I'll step off the phone, or are there other things that we ought to talk about? Do we need to talk about Hopkins and Dodge?
Yes, Hopkins and Dodge, let's see, what, 60, on the low scale, right. Gotta find it on which map it's on here. Low scale, all right. It's talking about possibly 3 stories there, and when I talk with the business folks there that are in that plaza, there's no parking there now, they were concerned if it was higher, where the car's gonna go.
Well, if it were redeveloped, Ramona, it might be a totally different configuration than what it is today, and the parking would have to be taken into consideration.
I'm not sure what that means.
More vertical and less horizontal. The footprint would be smaller, but the buildings would be taller.
And if it's mixed use, there could be a shared parking where
Yes.
retail guests use it during the day and residents use the parking at night.
How realistic is it, what are we talking about here? Let's just take Hopkins Dodge for an example, since we're on it. It's a plaza right now. When do you think it might be redeveloped to 2 or 3 stories? I mean, I'm not sure even who owns it. I assume maybe Benderson or somebody like that. But are they going to be actually doing this? Well, we have plazas all over the town. What's the thought with the people who own these plazas? Are they going to stay plazas for the next 15 years, or do they want to do something else with it, what we're thinking that they might? How realistic is it that they're going to change it?
That's a good question.
So that is a great question, but the key for the zoning is simpler than that. Right now, we have set this area, because it is suburban and not traditional, we've set it at 3 flat stories. And when I personally look at this site, where the Dashes Market is, there's a substantial buffer existing on the back.
No, you're looking at the wrong place, Lee.
Number 60. Go up Miller, or go up Hopkins Road to the north.
You're close.
Next biggest site.
You're close, you're within a mile.
There's a Michael Phelps School.
Across from Williamsville North High School.
It's across from North, there's a chiropractor, there's a Chinese restaurant, Bocce's Pizza, right.
Got it. So, once again, and I'm at the wrong node because we're not in the same stream, that's my fault. This is a little bit of a challenging site. Although it does, other than the right age adjacency to the single-family house there along Dodge, it does have a great buffer back behind it. Would we see this redeveloping as 3 stories anytime soon? The question is only if it redevelops, would we want it to be 2.5 stories with a pitched roof in a traditional form, or 3 stories with a flat roof in the suburban form? And it already meets most of the rules for the suburban form. In other words, if you look at the amount of parking out front between the building and the street, that is the level of parking that we were anticipating being allowed in the suburban form. 2 rows of parking with a drive aisle in between. So the actual building siting for all of those buildings is correct. And it would simply be a question of whether we anticipate seeing taller buildings over time, and whether those buildings would be 3-story flat roofs with the parking out front, or whether the buildings should actually be pulled up, in this case, to Hopkins Road. And if we are pulling them up, whether we want to use the traditional form with pitched roof at 2.5.
Well, I'm guessing, but I would think that the 2.5 stands more in the character of the neighborhood than the 3 stories. And consensus seems to be everybody shaking their head, Lee. So I think we'd be in favor of the 2.5 stories.
So if that is the case, would we also be pulling the building towards the street?
No.
So in your mind, suburban low-scale node, the district for it, in our district table, should now read 2.5 stories instead of 3.
Yes.
So all of low-scale nodes across the city at this point is 2.5 stories.
That's a pretty broad statement. Let us look for a minute.
Whether low-scale nodes are suburban or traditional, they'll have a pitched roof in their maximum form, and they're 2.5 stories tall.
Well, I think we're looking at the designations now and trying to see whether we agree or disagree with you. Give us a minute. Give us a minute.
No problem.
So again, Lee, in your mind,
The question is, can you restate it again for me if you can?
Three flat roof stories versus 2.5 with a pitched roof.
And we're talking about the
I think what I heard is the suburban form should still stay, pushed back from the street. So that would continue to be true, that you would be allowed to put parking between the building and the street. So it is simply a question then of whether we are looking at a 3-story flat roof building for a 2.5-story pitched roof building.
Right, and that would apply to all the nodes, which, well, that's the issue.
That would apply to everything that had been designated low scale.
Right.
Right now, if we change that on the chart, all low scale nodes, whether traditional or suburban, would all be at their maximum of 2.5-story pitched roof form.
Why? Why can't we leave it as it is now? You got traditional low-scale node at Transit and Dodge, and you got it as a low-scale node 3. And that particular area doesn't have that much residential around it, and the residential it is scaled all the ways back on Dodge. It's not out on Transit, and that would be appropriate for 3 stories there. That's not a problem. So how would it apply there?
I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm just saying that the alternative to that had been to designate this one we were looking at Hopkins and Dodge traditional. That would have put it in 2.5 stories, but it would have built the buildings closer to the street than they are today.
Oh.
And I think people are quite comfortable with the suburban pattern that's there today. They just want a smaller building. So do we need both a 2.5 and a 3-story suburban form so that we can designate this one 2.5 and leave a number of the others at 3?
Yeah, I would think so. You gotta have some options in there, because not all of these have residences around them. Some of them are on major thoroughfares, some of them are on secondary thoroughfares. There's gotta be a distinction between the two.
Just gotta create one off.
Okay?
Right?
Right now, this would be the only parcel that would apply to.
Right.
So it'd be one off.
Lee, I got a question for you. If we have a suburban low-scale node at a max of 3 stories, assuming a flat roof, that would still allow 2.5 stories with a peak roof, if the developer chose, correct?
That is correct. It's not the maximum form in terms of floor area, but yes, there will be no regulations which require the flat roof, so the pitched roof would still be an allowed option for an applicant.
So it just, the 3-story max just offers the applicant more redevelopment options. We shouldn't necessarily assume they're gonna take advantage of that 3-story max. They may determine that they want, fewer apartments or fewer smaller developable area because of parking and go with 2.5 stories with a peak.
That's correct.
And so, following that logic, in my mind, there's not a big difference between 3 stories and 2.5 with a peak in terms of its visual perspective. My vote would be to just allow the 3-story max, assuming it's got a flat roof, and let the developer who's taking the risk decide on what's appropriate given the use and the market.
So, looking at the Hopkins and Dodge site, is there any reason to think that it is inappropriate to put a 3-story building on that site where the Rite Aid is, for example? Actually, it probably couldn't be done again because of the transition rules we're thinking of applying. This has a very poor transition of a fence almost up on the side lot line of the house and just a few trees. And that would not be true as we're imagining the buffer in the future. But it is potentially true that you could get a 3-story building on this site.
Particularly those Sears Harbor stories.
But I think it's gonna be really governed by the proximity of the residential, or how close it is. I think that if the residence is close enough, and Ramon agree or disagree with me, if the residences are close enough, the pitched roof offers a much more visual pleasing opportunity for people, and the flat roof 3 is not gonna be as visually pleasing.
Right, I think they would prefer the 2.5 versus 3, that there is a difference. And that was my original question when the meeting opened.
So, Carl, despite the fact that from a purely number of stories view, like, what's the difference? 6 of one, half a dozen others, really what you're saying, but what's visually appealing would make the difference to the neighborhood around it.
Just makes it harder to develop.
So, just to make this point, Kim, can you get down to Street View to actually,
Sure, of Hopkins and Dodge. Hopkins?
yes, can you put your little guy on Dodge, right there at the fence line between the house and the Rite Aid?
Sure.
So the house is actually 2.5 stories. They are not using a habitable story in the roof form. It doesn't appear because there are no windows there. So it's just an attic space on the house, but it could have been a habitable roof form. So you're seeing the difference between the two building types when you look straight down this buffer.
Okay, we're looking at it, but I'm not quite sure what your point is.
I'm just saying that yes, a building which was as tall as the pitch of the single-family building and had 3 stories in it. But was flat roofed, you know, basically on that same footprint where the Rite Aid is, would potentially have an impact on this first house. I think it'd be fine from the street. I don't have any problem with it from Hopkins or Dodge. But this adjacency at the house is problematic. Now, we have never talked about using a bulk plane for something that is only 3 stories tall. We've always assumed the bulk plane was for 4, 5, and 8-story tall buildings. You know, is this potentially a situation where you would want to step back that flat roof building away from the single family with a bulk plane? Perhaps. If that's a possible resolution, then we could leave it zoned for 3 stories and a flat roof and just use the transition rule to manipulate the relationship with the house in the back here.
I was just gonna ask you about the transitioning, component, because, I mean, if you plant a row of trees in between the 2 properties, the residents wouldn't even be able to probably see a 3-story structure.
That's correct. The buffer that was created here is wide enough, but it is not well enough landscaped.
That's where transitioning becomes more relevant.
You can see the examples in the little piece that was handed out there on page 10 of the assessment piece, the framework piece. It talks about transitions and shows a little drawing of how a bulk plane works and some of the drawings from the charrette work on Transit Road especially.
I'm gonna guess by looking around the room and how people are looking at the example, that nobody seems to be thrilled with it, but then again, I could be wrong. I still think that the 2.5-story is more acceptable than the bulk plane. Do we agree or disagree?
On this size building, they're the same. I mean, if you look at the bulk plane, it starts after 2 stories and goes across, so it's the same difference as 2.5, or bulk plane, either one.
But is it as aesthetically pleasing, though?
So essentially...
It would keep you from going, the bulk plane would keep you from going the full 42 feet in height. The house is probably closer to 35, which is I believe, the current regulation for the residential zone. So presumably the house is only 35 feet. But the building is pushed back a fair ways from the lot line. So if we were at the setback, if we were at sort of the equivalent of the edge of the parking area, the drive aisle there, and the bulk plane went up, you might be able to go straight up. You'd only have to be 7 feet back under a traditional bulk plane in order to get that additional 7 feet of height.
But Lee, let me ask you an aesthetic question, okay? The bulk plane is a flat, pitched roof, is it not?
The bulk plane just tells you to stay under it, so it could be, you know, your flat roof is steps away and sits under it, or it could be a pitched roof actually parallels the bulk plane.
So there's a couple different options with the bulk plane.
Depends on
The bulk plane would be just on the side where the residence is here, where if you did a pitched roof that we're talking about, it would be on both sides of the building. So in this case, towards the high school would still be a full 3-story building,
Correct.
but it would be essence sort of like 2.5 it starts at 2, goes up to 3.
But it would be a
At the angle,
deeper pitch,
yeah.
wouldn't it? Than a 2.5? Because it would encompass more space, would it not?
All planes start at the height of 35 feet. So you could theoretically build your whole 3-story building under the bulk plane if you move it back 7 feet. In other words, if I'm trying to achieve 42, the maximum height, I could simply slide my building into the site from the setback 7 feet. And here in this case, it's at about 20 feet. If you look at where those trucks are, that's about 20 feet of pavement there. So it's already set in 20 feet. If we were using a bulk plane model, you could go 20 feet up for the 20 feet forward that you push the building back. Not that we would allow you to go beyond the district allowed height.
So it really just becomes a matter of personal preference.
Yes.
All right,
The
then.
bulk plane as drawn in the transition section of the paper would not likely affect the building on the footprint of the Rite Aid.
Right. So how would you specify in the code whether it became a pitched roof with the potential for dormers on it, or it become a bulk plane? Would you give that option to the developer, or is it by neighborhood that we would allow it?
Well, so we were anticipating using the bulk plane to manipulate buildings when they were at 4 stories and above in height. Because 3 stories is fundamentally the allowed height of the residential. You could actually, where the pitched roof single-family house is, you could have a very contemporary modern home that was a full 3 stories there underneath the 35 feet. And so we were expecting to use the bulk plane for the most egregious examples where we might have 5 stories adjacent to a single-family neighborhood, in which case you definitely would be stepping the building away from the adjacent development.
So we wouldn't even be talking about the site that we're looking at, because we're not talking 5 stories. We're only talking 2.5.
Correct.
So it doesn't even apply here.
But transitioning...
So the bulk plane is sort of ineffective unless you chose to start the bulk plane at the ground, which is exotic.
Yeah, I'd say. That's our call.
I was gonna say, the bulk plane component may not apply here, but, mandating transitioning strategies would apply to address the residential to the commercial.
Pine trees in that buffer. That's the principal thing that would be done.
Yeah.
And that would not be a fence there, it would be a wall.
All right. Since I'm confused, and I don't know, I'm confused as to what I want to do. I understand what you're telling me. Can you pick a district on this sheet that's bulk plane could apply to? So we can kind of visualize it?
So, the bulk plane is on that page 10. So it starts at the setback. So let's assume the setback is the curb line of the pavement. There's a buffer. Actually, so let's start on the single family side. There's the single family with its fence. If we go, I'm facing it, so I'm just gonna say, if we go left, all of that is buffer and setback until you get to the pavement. If we assume that is the setback line, then at 35 feet straight up, you would be allowed to go straight up along that line in this particular district. Now, we could set the starting point for the bulk plane lower and begin to impact the medium-scale nodes with flat roofs. It would not impact the ones that chose to build with pitched roofs, because the pitched roofs would fit under the bulk plane.
Anybody have any thoughts for or against?
I don't think bulk plane works in a 3-story
situation.
Well, that's what he said, though. He wouldn't be applying it unless it were 5 stories. Right.
It's only,
So, Lee, I'm gonna go back and ask you again, can you show us an example of one of these districts that it would apply to, not to this one, where theoretically it doesn't apply?
Well, so what you would have to do to get the impact I think that you were thinking about is you would have to start the bulk claim when these two particular types abut, single family and low-scale node, suburban, you would have to start the bulk claim at, for example, 24 feet in height. So if it were 24 feet, then simply to get to 35 feet, move the building in 11 feet. And to get to the 42 feet, you'd have to move the building in 18 feet. So you're pushing the building away with the bulk plane, or you're stepping underneath it. They could still be at the setback line and be at 24 feet in height, for example, which is probably about what the height of the current building there is. So that could sit at the setback line, but no additional height could sit on top of it until it moved far enough into the site to be able to get that additional story. So that's the only way that you could make the bulk plane work, would be to take that point of measurement down from 35 feet, the total height in the adjacent district, to something more like 24 feet.
All right, so what do you want to know from us?
That would allow us then to just leave the full 3 stories in all the medium-scale nodes, but when any medium-scale node abutted a single-family setting like this one, the bulk plane would kick in to make sure that nothing got too close to that.
And it would kick in as an option, right?
It would be a requirement, so it is an option in the sense that the developer can respond to it in any way that they choose. There's no reason to push your building back into there at all. That could be parking underneath there, and then you'd be totally unaffected by the fact the bulk plane was shooting up into the air over the parking. You chose to push your building back towards the house, it would have to be shorter at the back edge.
I can see where this bulk, would work with, higher than 3 stories in a more dense area. We're talking Dodge and Hopkins here. I'm still going with the 2.5 with the peak roof idea instead of this other concept.
So what do you need from us, Lee?
What's that?
What do you need from us?
I don't know. We either need to find a way to make this stay in the set, or we need to take this node out of the set.
Are we still talking about Hopkins?
Right now,
We're still talking about Hopkins and Dodge?
So the options that were on the table before is you're actually creating a whole new node that we don't have for this one particular application.
No, we already decided what we wanted to do at Hopkins and Dodge. We wanted to make it a low-scale node 2.5.
But then it's traditional. You don't have a suburban low-scale node, so you'd have to create one for this particular parcel.
Okay.
That was the concern that was raised about, there is no category to slip it into, we'd have to create one. The bulk plane solution was a way of getting there without having to create a whole new node just for this location.
Correct.
Gee, I wish you'd told me that 10 minutes ago. I would have felt a lot better about the whole thing. Jeez.
Hey, Lee, let me ask you a question.
Slide the aerial down a bit so we can see where the Sears hardware store was.
I'm looking at the table, and if I'm not mistaken, we're saying that a traditional low-scale node 2, which is essentially 2.5 stories or 44-foot maximum, and then we've got a suburban low-scale...
You should have said 42.
Okay,
Apologize.
all right. So then we're saying suburban low-scale node 3, which is what we're talking about here, right? And that's 3 stories, and that's 42-foot maximum. Is that correct? So we're basically talking about the same height of building.
See, on that particular...
It's really a question that have the pitched roof form for that height of building on this site. We can achieve the pitched roof form one of two ways. We can call this a special zoning district that requires the roof form at 2.5 instead of 3, or we can generate the pitched roof form by bringing down the bulk plane far enough that impacts the building as it gets close to this house.
When I look at this property, it's hard for me to conceive of the plaza being redeveloped as tall, but I look where the deeper parcel is, where the old hardware store used to be. There's a lot more flexibility to do something there with a little more height that would look appropriate just because of the depth of the parcel. So, rather than complicating everything by splitting up the parcel, I think by keeping it the way we've classified it allows a flexibility that I think would be beneficial towards the deeper part of that plaza. But practically speaking, it would be probably difficult to go taller than 2.5 stories on the balance of it anyways. So just because we give it something a 3-story limit doesn't mean that that's going to occur. But allowing that flexibility for the deeper portion of the property, which I think probably deserves to be redeveloped at some point in the next 15 years, giving somebody the ability to go 3 stories would be appropriate there because they have the room. They could even move the building around and move it up and get to 3 stories without really impacting much of anything.
Or maybe just make it's no longer Sears, I think it's Michael Phelps, whatever. Maybe just make that, because it's across from the parking lot, and then there are larger trees there behind that. Leaving the plaza part at 2.5 and then maybe making the Michael Phelps 3.
You're still left without a designation for 2.5, suburban 2.5. Unless you create one for this parcel.
Yes, I will admit that suburban and the pitched roof form aren't linked as strongly in my mind as they are in the traditional setting. So it made total sense to me when we shifted gears along the corridors and in the low-scale nodes that were traditional to shift to that roof form. I can see why one might want it for this one house in this situation, but it's not as though it's impacting an entire neighborhood with regard to that form. It's really impacting one immediately adjacent house.
Well, and the school across the street is one big flat roofed structure, so. The school across the street is one big flat roof structure, so it's not like it's a new form on Hopkins Road.
The other thing to keep in mind is you may be affecting one house, but that retail location there probably serves couple hundred households in terms of offering convenience retail close to those neighborhoods surrounding it. So I understand, you've got to balance the concerns of a small number of homeowners with the fact that neighborhood retail like this serves the surrounding neighborhood, so those people don't have to travel farther to get the conveniences, the daily conveniences that may encourage them to stop there.
I think that you and I may lose the battle on 2.5 here.
Yeah, I don't want to lose the battle on everything.
I think that we're talking here, whatever happens, this is going to be unique. It's going to be a plaza unto itself. So I like the idea that was submitted earlier of splitting it, 2.5 for the upper portion and 3 for the lower, for the southern part. That way, you get the separation from the house, and you still have the chance to put in a more decent-sized facility, and in the development, if you're gonna put 3 stories on the southern part, you're gonna probably have to make the majority of the northern part parking, just to fit the rest of the town code. So I think we're spinning our wheels in a certain amount, but since it's gonna be unique, I think do the 2.5 and the 3, and then we've got the best of both worlds.
I think, Duncan, the only resistance to that is that there currently isn't a node created for that, to be creating one specifically for this small parcel. If the group's fine with that, that's okay, it's just, just once we open that door, I can see us doing it again and again and again.
I agree, but I think we've done it with this one, that we're gonna have something unique here at this point, so.
We can also
that's my
change the
solution.
suburban low scale just to 2.5 stories.
I think the problem with that is that it might not apply to the suburban low scale along Worley and the one on Transit.
That is a difficult. You know, it may apply in other cases too. As we go through, we may find that it does apply in other cases.
For example, 51, Maple and Air, that's a really small, I'm not sure why that got classified that way. It's a really small patch. Was it because of the potential for expanding that into the lots next to it, or?
Yeah, you couldn't do that 3. Yeah. You know, Lee, let me take a poll of the committee on establishing a new low-scale node at 2.5.
Before we go there, Dale, Lee, Daniel Wachowski, I've got a question that's gonna come up, and, you know, it's been advised that we're gonna eliminate the general business district, the neighborhood business district, the shopping center district, the traditional neighborhood district, and the live-to-work district. At what point are you gonna evaluate all those existing zoning districts, and what will they be transferred to? Because right now, we're just focusing in on the centers and the corridors and the other designated areas, but we're proposing to eliminate 5 zoning districts without some rationale as to every other zoning district that we eliminate. The 5 districts we eliminate are gonna be eliminated town-wide. What are we gonna zone those to? And we're just wrestling with this one little geographic area. So, have you thought about that yet?
Probably not. I mean, most of those existing zoning districts are incorporated into these areas.
That was directed at me.
So the zoning would change to what's designated here.
Thought about that. We have not designated any of those other nodes. We've not suggested what they should be designated. But the fact of the matter is, they are not designated centers in the plan. And so in some cases, they may no longer even end up being commercial. So each of those has to be looked at in this process before we can delete all of those districts. And yes, we intended to look at each of those parcels. There's already a map with those designated, and so we know what their existing zoning is. But we have not moved on to those because we've not solidified, you know, sort of the whole system as we're doing now, going through these particular nodes.
So essentially what's going to happen is, beyond the geographic areas that we've highlighted in the low-scale node, center zoning, medium-scale node, the corridor zoning districts, there's going to be numerous properties that will either have to be up-zoned or down-zoned, and then we'll have to determine what the zoning would be proposed for those particular property owners.
Yes, and I would say we're going to try very hard to zone them over, not up nor down, but to their, to the closest equivalent category. So we're not intentionally, especially, we're not looking to up zone them, because they sit outside the center and in a sense, distract economic activity from being in the centers, from having the streets that it could if our centers were stronger. I don't think that we're talking about increasing the intensity of any of those.
With that said, and I'm still envisioning the university traditional center, I'm hoping that when you continue to draft language that there'll be a requirement for multiple uses, at least within the proposed center zoning district, so that in the case of University Center, we don't get a redevelopment of the entire parcel for multifamily apartments without the ancillary and supportive retail uses. So I'm just hoping that we can build something into the language that will require multiple uses, that you just couldn't build an entire parcel of multifamily, at least in the center zoning district.
Any response to that at this point, Lee? I think that's, we can take that under consideration as we get to that point in the process.
There are certainly tools for that, and while I am not, I'm not eager to force anyone to develop retail. We do have tools that force retail form on the ground floors and allow the multifamily only to be in the upper stories. And I believe you've used that tool before in Amherst.
Okay. I think, if I'm not mistaken, we had a suggestion here that we create a suburban low-scale node 2.5. Is that what you said? I don't know if we can move forward with that, and then maybe we need to take a look at the map and distinguish which ones need to be put in that category.
I think Ellen already pointed one out, and I think I've identified another one.
Well, I understand David's point there. Once we start doing that, even though I want the 2.5 here, once we start doing that, we can go crazy, make ourselves crazy here with every one here of changing it, and all of a sudden we'll end up with, I don't know, 30 things here. I would just like to see the suburban low scale, the whole, as a group, be 2.5 stories. I think that would make it easier.
Okay. So, suburban low-scale node is currently node 3, with 3 stories, 42 feet maximum. There's been a suggestion made that we change that entire category to suburban low-scale node 2.5, which would still be 42 maximum, but it would be 2.5 stories. All in favor of doing that, please raise your hand. Opposed to doing that, raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 are opposed, and again, who is in favor of it, raise your hand again, I lost count. 3 are, well, I guess we don't do that then. We leave it as it is. Okay, so now let's ask the other question. Who are in favor of creating a new category of a suburban low-scale node 2.5? Anybody in favor of that? 1, 2, 3, 4 opposed? And we have abstentions, I guess. You voted for the first one? Oh, okay. So, since I missed you, please bear with me, okay? It's my age is creeping up on me, all right? In favor of 2.5, please raise your hand again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. So, no, we're talking, creating a new one. Yep. So it looks like there are more people in favor of creating a new one than there are opposed. Did you get that, Lee?
So we'll make sure that next time there's a suburban suburban low-scale 2.5, as well as the existing suburban low-scale 3.
Okay.
I think the second part of that was...
I'm gonna leave you guys to talk about the other ones in the gray in boxes. Those are the ones where multiple opportunities exist. Of course, now that you've created a new flavor, you might have to look at the suburban low-scale nodes, and now we have a choice there of 2.5 or 3. So between this meeting and your next one, we need to square all of these away. And I'll talk to Dan and the staff about whether we want to try to make a stab at proposed replacement zoning for the places that sit outside of the center, so that you could get some sense of that as well.
Lee, are you leaving us because your wife called you to dinner?
You know, if I don't go home sometime soon, I think I eat with the dog in the yard.
I think that you're already there, my friend.
Could I interrupt 1 second? I have one item for Lee that I'd like to just bring up to everybody, and it really relates to what Ramona's been talking about, and I think at page 8, the graphic for the maximum building height, I think, is really nice. It's really good, but I would like to suggest that as part of that, because this is three-dimensional, that another item be developed that would be just straight elevations, that then there could be a line growing at the existing height allowed on each site, type of site, and then show with some shading the difference of what we're reducing in the heights of the building. And I have a rough sketch of this I'll give to Kim, and she can review it in more detail with you separately.
Before and after.
Yeah, it shows that in reality, most of what we're doing is reducing the height allowed in all of these different sites. There's only one building type that goes above what the existing height allows. I think that would help I think the town board and most of the public that are not used to reading three-dimensional drawings of what we're really trying to do with this.
Thank you. Okay, Lee, you can go now.
Thank you. We'll talk to you guys again soon. Thanks for your help tonight.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Okay. So Dale, was the second part of that vote that we just had, then splitting the Dodge Hopkins parcel 60 into suburban 2.5 where the strip plaza is, and suburban low node 3 where the former hardware store was? We didn't do that yet, but was that the second part of that conversation?
Okay. Do we want to split that? How many people are in favor of splitting it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, would carry, we would split that then. You want to make a note on that, Kim? All right, if you go back to this sheet again and start on the first page on number 1, let's look in the proposed zoning district and try and get this out of the way with this new low-scale node that we just created, so we can be done with this. So, suburban low-scale node, I think the first one that I see, and please help me, would be number 25, which is 6 corners. It's suburban low-scale node 3. Do we want it to maintain as a 3 or go to a 2.5?
Eggers, Long Meadow, and Millersport.
Let's try and go through this rather quickly. Who would prefer to go to a 2.5? Raise your hand, please. Okay, nobody wants to go to a 2.5, so we leave it at 3. So 6 corners stays as it is. Next would be number 40, Worley and South Forest. All right. Anyone prefer to see that change to 2.5? No? Okay, we'll leave that as is. 41, Worley and South Union. Anyone prefer to see that change to 2.5? Nope.
There's more, residential there, right?
There's more what?
Residential, on the eastern side.
Yeah, on the eastern side there is.
Yeah, well, I would recommend we go through here.
Okay, one vote for 2.5. Anybody else?
We got the big parcel where the fitness place is, that's pretty big. Why else would it be there, unless it's split?
Yes, we're better off leaving that one as is, probably. Yeah, it's big, it's right.
That's right, it's on the northwest corner.
Yep. Yeah, that's where the fitness center is, right? Yep. Okay, so we'll leave that one as it is. 42, Worley and Cayuga. Yeah, you already have some height there. Keep it as it is? You're right. 47, Main and Youngs. Main and Youngs. No. It is an important corner. Leave it as it is? I don't think you get a vote. Okay. All right, Maple and Air. I would like to see Maple and Air change to 2.5. We agreed, Maple and Air go to 2.5? I would think so. The northeast corner would be where the gas station is. Gas station and all that, 2.5, that's all surrounded up by all residential. 53, Maple and North Forest. Anybody want to see that changed to 2.5? No? Okay, we'll leave it as is. And then 55, which is Clearfield Plaza. Leave it as it is? Okay, Transit and Dodge, number 58. I would say leave that as it is. That's pretty commercial as it is.
Well, there's a nursery there now.
Right.
Which has, all you see are trees and bushes.
But if we redevelop, would you find the objection to go to 3 stories there?
It's Swanville, it's across from St. Mary's. There's, Walgreens down at the corner, but as far as in that stretch, there's basically, a barber shop.
Couple of taverns.
Yeah, one tavern, yes. And then Russell's is really, gold there. Has most of the property there as a nursery. So, and this is, I think, classified as Swanville, so I would like to see the 2.5 there.
You'd like to see 2.5. Does everybody agree with that or not?
I would support it.
Yep. Okay.
I would.
No?
Stranded Road, that's a major corridor.
It's two lanes there, and it's not gonna become 4 lanes anytime soon.
Well, I would agree with that, but it's still a major corridor, and 3 stories, it's not that high, especially for a street like Transit.
But it's Swanville.
Right. Let's take a vote.
How many people say leave it as it is? As it is, 3 stories. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many see change it to 2.5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Change it to 2.5. And I think the next one is 65 Sweet Home in North French. Thoughts? Leave it as it is? Change it? Okay. How many in favor, leave it as it is? Yeah, you got a mixed bag there. You got that empty lot that's on the southeast corner that's probably never gonna be developed, because nobody wants to put a house on that corner. You know, and you look across, you got the Redemption Bottle Center on the other side, which 7-Eleven used to be. It's with the empty bank building on the other corner. How many would like to leave it as it is? 1, 2, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we're leaving that as it is. Campbell and North French. That's number 66. Campbell and North French. They just put the new NOCO station on the corner there. And the pizza place is on the other corner, right? And then across the street, it's all residential.
I would support 2.5.
Okay. Everybody in favor of 2.5? Okay. All right, we'll change that one to 2.5. All right, we're done with that. Now where do you want us to go, Mr. Howard? By the way, does everybody know that Dan Howard has been appointed the Assistant Planning Director for the town of Amherst?
Celebration cupcake.
He got real bossy around town.
He's buying at the Irishman. Aren't you glad I brought that up?
Yeah. Today's Kim's birthday.
Hey, today's Kim's birthday.
And I'm here.
Does everybody know that Kim's getting married on September the 8th?
Indeed.
And then she, by herself, without her husband, is taking a trip to Europe.
That's the best time we can learn quick.
Day after, see you later.
But he's driving her to the airport, though,
Yeah.
which I thought was very nice of him. Okay, enough jocularity. All right.
Number 14.
Can we go back to this page and look at the shaded boxes again, so we can run through this? Number 14, Niagara Falls Boulevard Strip. Suburban Corridor 3. Suburban Corridor 3. 3 stories, 42 feet max.
Something like that that's on that part of the strip, but what are the folks, or what is the plan setback for those? I know there are houses behind.
The whole block is commercial, so the street design, that whole block is commercial, so the houses are on the other side of the street.
They put that back up to the commercial.
They don't.
They don't. Oh, they're on the other side of the street.
Right, right. It's not, there's not, on 14, there's no big street. Up where you are, there are.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Down here.
Wrong. Sorry.
We're down South Edgewood.
Gotcha, sorry about that.
It's okay.
So it's good.
Can't remember.
All right. Are we okay with Suburban Corridor 3? All in favor of Suburban Corridor 3, please raise your hand. Okay, it's unanimous. Okay. Next would be number 18, Sheridan Millersport Strip. It's Suburban Corridor 3 also. Sheridan Millersport Strip. That crazy intersection with Duff's and all that other stuff there. We okay with that? Okay, all right. You say okay.
Corridor 3. This one's going
There's no suburban corridor, just 3.5.
No, that's not right. We already dealt with 20, did we not? We split it into two? Okay. So let's go to 23, which we also changed to. Did we not? Okay, so 24, Millersport and Arcade. I'm sorry. No, 18 was okay. Yep. Millersport and Arcade. Suburban Corridor 3. Are we okay with that?
So it's like the plaza here?
Probably the most famous use.
What was it?
You know, where the drugstore is, we have those burned down, stage.
That was before me. Yes, it was. You're old.
Wasn't that called road?
It was. It's always good, and it backs up the Delaware Park.
It's right.
Yeah, now that we know where it is, Millersport and Arcade, Suburban Corridor 3, is that okay? It is? Okay. All right, number 31, Eggertsville, Main Eggert on the north side. It's, traditional, medium scale, node 3. Eggertsville, the north side. Yeah, I guess you can't go too much lower than that. Are we okay with that? Okay, we're okay with it. Ask me that again?
You brought up the street.
He answered it for you? Okay. Thanks, David. Number 36, Main and Kensington.
Really gotta verify anything in red.
Oh, we gotta do the red too? I thought he just said the, grayscale. Okay, 32, Eggertsville, Main, and Eggert, South Side. Traditional low-scale node, 2.5. I think that was subject of conversation a lot at the last meeting. So we should be okay with that, right? Okay. Number 34, Harlem and Kensington. Traditional low-scale node, 2.5. You okay with that? Okay. On the other side, number 36, Main and Kensington. Traditional medium-scale node, 3 stories.
This covers both sides, so this is the height of the non-conforming.
Yeah. No, probably not. We okay with that? Okay. 40 we dealt with, 41 we dealt with, 42 we dealt with, 43, Sheridan and Hopkins, Suburban Corridor 3. We okay with that? Okay. 44, Evans Strip, Suburban Corridor 3. Okay? 45, Williamsville Place. Wow. Suburban Center 5. We okay? We're okay with 5? Yeah? Okay. Main Strip, Traditional Corridor 3. Where is the Main Strip?
It's on the east of the
The east of the village, south side.
Okay.
Around corridor.
Are we okay with that?
Because the issue along Main Street there, the flat front there, the 3 stories look so foreboding to some people, that if you can have it
setback.
The setback, yeah.
I'm sorry, Dick?
A setback or a setback?
Step, I guess, both.
That's both sides of the street.
The blue kind of covers all the street.
Yeah, they,
What do we want to do with that one, guys? 46 Main Strip, traditional corridor 3. We okay with that? Except for the setback. Step back, are you saying, or setback? Setback and step back, both.
we discussed this,
Yeah.
and then fourth story, or third story, yeah, back.
We talked about step back. Right. We did step back. Right.
I recall-
Not,
I
yeah, but
recall
not
talking
us,
about step back.
we didn't talk about a setback though.
Well, we talked about this last meeting when we was here, that we felt there were concerns about buildings that fall on the street, if they're up against the curb, so having a setback, that would soften how the building's presence in the main street. And if that's not something we need for the 3 stories, we can step back.
right, that was on both east and west side of the village, that conversation.
So how do we do that? We don't have anything in the categories that talk about that on this.
Decide as a committee if that's what we want to do, and we want to apply it there, then we'll have to work on it in the code.
Let's come back to that one, okay? Let's try and get the other ones out of the way before we get to a long discussion. 48 Transit in Worland, suburban corridor 3. We okay with that? 49 Transit from Maine to Maple, suburban corridor 3. From Maine to Maple. That's a big area. But then when you look at it though, you know what? Particularly when you look at the trains on the Amherst side, there's a lot of residents behind there, lots of residents behind there. Lots of apartment buildings behind there too.
Are there any buildings there that would be non-conforming?
I don't, besides the fact that everything else, most of them are single story. You might find some that have a false facade, they go up 2 stories, but most of them are single stories. The car dealers are single story.
Yeah, I mean, that's my concern, because you may have, 2-story buildings with a, peaked roof that already, exceeds that height.
Well, going down the street, I'm trying to think.
No.
The only group that I can think of is the urgent care.
somebody started reading.
Yeah.
This.
There's the bank as well.
That starts to enclose that wide corridor that have its height.
These are all setback.
Single story too.
There's, it's just this one, so,
Well, that's on the fire side.
yeah, but
Move that up, please.
sure.
If
They're all pretty smart.
If Eastern Hills Mall gets redeveloped, there's a chance, there's a good chance, I would think, because the definite value of the property, that you'll see some buildings that are 5 stories.
Is if in capital letters?
I would think it's a matter of time before the mall gets redeveloped. It's dying to go back.
Little bird,
And-
there's a major investment that will go on, and the road will be
On what side of the road?
Major.
The word that was used to describe
That's already
the
been-
Kaboom. Major, game changer.
Well, there was a rumor that Sonic was going back.
I think it's bigger than that.
Bigger than that.
Do that in the first place. It's not a person.
Nope. Yeah. Where are we?
He told me this last Wednesday, he said in about 10 days, it'll be like this week. Come down, Kaboom, and we did.
Something to look forward to. Where are we?
So that's come
We're
back.
at 49.
After the Kaboom happened, it's come back in the morning, so.
Let's, 49, anybody got any thoughts on transit from Lincoln to Maple?
I support the 3, just because the corridor is so wide. I'd like to, reshape that with some enclosures and things.
Would you go to 5?
Would I go to 5? I wouldn't go to 5.
You would?
I would not right now.
Go to 5, more to Maple. All right, so we'll leave it as it is. Everybody's okay? On 49, yes. Okay, transit in Maple, suburban center, 5. Now, interesting, Dan, I'm gonna put you on the spot. You wouldn't go to 5 on this, why would you go to 5 here?
I don't know if I agree with 5 and 6.
We don't have, on the centric designation, we don't have anything less than 5.
The line, yeah.
Right, all of that.
Right.
All of it's narrow, right.
What does the existing zone allow? 65 feet?
General business district.
5-story, yeah. And yet, the developer has chosen to build 5 stories. There's no guarantees, all market guarantees.
Well,
They couldn't park the 5-story.
I was just gonna say, but to your point too, there's not anything over 1 story. If you look at transit and you look all the way from Maple up to Klein, you look at Lowe's is 1 story, adjacent to Lowe's, all the shopping centers are 1 story, Wegmans is 1 story, 1 story Target is a 1 story, Pier 1, 1 story, Kohl's. Orville, 1 story, I mean, everything's 1 story. So despite the fact that we don't have a 3, maybe this is classified wrong, maybe it shouldn't be a center, maybe it should be a corridor. No,
Where's 3, south of Maple?
well, yeah.
I mean, if you follow Joe Manfrosi's rationale, he'll argue that 5 stories makes more sense from the town standpoint because you're getting more development per acre and therefore more tax revenue that kind of density. A ground floor retail with 4 stories of apartments above will generate more tax revenues to the town than housing. So, that kind of development helps sustain the town's tax base better than what's existing there now.
So 1,000 feet north.
South, beautiful.
Okay, 1,000 feet.
$700.
On the north side of Maple. But I'm not looking at that particular, I don't want the intersection. I want, go south of, go to Chevy here, south of, you know what I'm saying? I want the typical
Right here.
depth, yeah. The north is 700 feet. So that's why. That's why it goes through. And so this is, and this, and then all right, guys. What do we want to do? We'll leave it as 5?
The only thing I'd like to mention there is anything really large scale there that might involve residential is going to add a lot to the traffic on transit. It's going to put a lot more cars on the road. I understand the tax base issue as well, but that's already just a really heavy traffic area with a lot of what goes along with cars.
It's several windows.
But, since that quarter is already developed, you'd be substituting residential likely for retail that's currently there, so I'm not sure at the end you're actually increasing traffic by adding residential, maybe taking traffic away because you're replacing retail, because of the quarter currently is.
All right, so we leave it as it is?
And just as a comment here, just learning more about sewer capacity with different things that what the town can be able to handle in the future may make all this moot anyways.
That's nothing. All right, we'll leave it as it is for now. Next is 52 Maple Strip, suburban corridor spring. Nothing to be transit to Maple North Court. It's down, east of Maple North Court. Hector Hardware.
800 Maple.
800 Maple.
Oh, right.
Boardwalk. Is that okay? Yeah. Yep. Everybody's okay? I don't know why we want to bring this up. 54 Gun Club. Suburban medium scale node, 4.
It's a weird transition on the south side. And it's, again, personally think this road corridor is too wide. If you're gonna diet, we don't need 5 lanes.
Well, and I think I just would remind you that there's a 100-foot three-state buffer along the north side of the 100 feet. The first 100 feet of that front of your parcel is 700 feet. So you've got 100-foot setback.
Another 100 feet that may go
Prohibit
wide.
anything, right? Recreation Conservation District.
Okay, we okay with this or not? We're okay with it, everybody? Okay?
This is the suburban medium scale, so what we did earlier in the evening,
Yeah, we added the hotels to this.
There was already a boutique hotel allowed for suburban medium scale.
Yeah, but we added, according to my notes.
Yeah, we did. There was a hotel approved on it, okay. Move on. 56, Transit and Casey. Suburban corridor, 3 stories. Transit and Casey, as it exists today, is basically all 1 story. Up both the north, south side, and south side, and if you walk and run it, Transit Road, up to North French, and run it multiple stories when you get to, that senior housing complex. Lot Street, that's everything else now, and the out parcels in front of Fox Creek are 2 stories. But everything else up and down that street is all 1 story.
Fox Creek is 4 stories?
3? It is 3?
3 with the peak, 3.5.
Yeah, so they're at, put the bad people on the line, I think. That's what I'm gonna be. That's why you know it's like.
On the 3rd floor.
Warmer. All right, we okay with this? Transit and Casey okay at quarter to 3?
mentioned there that,
You know, this is where you start having all the creeks coming in, you know, God Creek and all that. So I'm always concerned about them.
Yeah.
sorry, he died.
Well, actually, Ramona, that creek is south. That creek is between, that creek is between, three.
right here, that creek is behind, that
Right,
creek.
so that's that creek right there. Oh, that's right, it runs all the ways over there. Yeah, got it. I was thinking it was just behind Grover here, but that's, no, we're all the way back. Okay, guys, what do you want to do?
Since less than what's permitted now, 42 feet max and height.
Yep, okay, it's 65 now.
Leave it.
Leave it as is. Now, suppose it's up. Okay. Transit North French, suburban medium scale node 4.
Same issues with God Creek just up the road, and then you've got Ransom Creek coming in behind that. And some of that land is like floodway and stuff.
Two-story, or a half because of commercial on the lower side.
The other one.
Oh, the other one's on the other side?
I don't remember.
2 and a half.
2.5? No, we'll go back, it's still less than what's allowed now. Leave it as is? You scale 2.5. It is 21, you have to take it off the way.
parcel,
On the west,
Transit North French parcel we're talking about.
So it's the entire area, eh? Shopping center.
Shopping center.
All the stuff on the north side here.
And then down Transit Road. Four and a half.
Well, I'd like to take your word for it, but I'd like to have it right in here that, when Ransom Creek backs up, I've lived up in this area for 34 years, it overflows. And to have more building there. Those buildings that you see there used to be, I would say, flood storage areas, used to hold the water. The buildings that are there now, that water, that land that used to hold that water's gotta go someplace. And it's gonna start going over North French Road into those apartments.
Well, it's suburban, medium scale node, we don't have too much of an option. Again, it doesn't make sense to make it a low scale node, you take it down to three.
As I've stated before, that it's going to be hard to control Tonawanda Creek and Ransom Creek and Scott Creek in the future, and the past development, I think, is just making this area worse, and to try to encourage more development here, especially when you have floodways. It may not happen this year or next year or 5 years. It's going to happen sometime.
I don't know if we have to equate height with density. I mean, we're looking at a plaza that's probably 85% impervious now. If it were ever to become redeveloped over the next 20 years, there may be opportunities to recapture green space. So I don't know if we should continue to equate height with density, because we haven't even gotten into to what extent are we going to allow buildings to cover that much space, right? That's 85% or more of coverage.
It's huge. Between the top plaza and the one next door, the post office, you know, it's huge, right? What's the will of the committee? How are you in favor of leaving it as it is? Okay. So this is, it is, concerns are noted among those.
Less than a,
Yes. We already did 58, so 59 is Swarmville. Let me ask somebody a question. Is it Swarmville or Swarmsville?
Why Swarmville?
no L.
How come most people say, well, I say, check it out. Okay, Swarmville, traditional low scale node, 2.5. Okay? We already did 61, Getchville Plaza, suburban medium scale node, 4.
Yeah.
I guess I get to express a personal opinion once in a while. I'd like to see this be a low-scale node, and I'd like to see, if we can We have a lot more residential that's around there for you, stretch it out.
To suburban low scale node 2.5.
That would be better.
Yeah, that's today's
Yeah, suburban low scale. Let's, would everybody agree with that, suburban low scale node 2.5? Yes. Okay, let's make sure on that one. 62 Sweet Home Road or Skinnersville, suburban corridor 3. So we should be okay with this, right? Okay. Campbell Dodge, traditional low-scale node 2.5. That should be fine, right? Dodge Strip Suburban Corridor 3.
This was stuff that backed up, remember, nursery is, and west of, fire hall.
Thoughts? Yes, it's true. It is. It's very, there's residential across the street, but then on the north side of it is the 990.
I can see the development residential more than that. Most of them are pretty half there.
What do you think, guys?
Fine.
It's okay? It's okay, all right, okay. Sweet Home, North French, we did already. Campbell, North French, we did already. Cross Point, medium scale node 4.
Just a joke for the record, just a joke.
I hope I'm just going to the notes, but. Are we okay with the suburban medium scale node? 4? Yeah. Okay. The Transit Millerport, suburban medium scale node 4. Would you like to see that down? Would you like to see it down too? Change it to a low scale node, it would be 3. Yeah.
Partly because of the water issues on the street and
Good.
Where's the residential around there?
It's scattered down Millersport Highway, more than anything else. There's a little bit on Transit Road, but so little it's not even worth it. And very frankly, you know what, I think most of it's on the fire side anyway.
right.
Yeah, 84 lumber there.
Drop ours and go to low scale 3. Low level 3.
We could do suburban low scale node 3. Would that be more acceptable?
Can we do a street view real quick?
I guess I go for 2.5 there.
Right down here, then.
Yeah, thanks.
I need a feel for.
That's Millersport.
That's gonna be a roofing company.
That house. So they're really
For the
early.
flea market at one point.
don't limit the value of that property.
All right, you want to compromise on 3?
3 works.
Take it down from 4 to 3?
No road.
Can I make a suggestion here, maybe this becomes a traditional corridor street, and it's a corridor, is that characteristic to it? You do have a traditional corridor street. Anybody disagree with that? Traditional or suburban corridor street? I'm sorry, suburban corridor. Suburban corridor, sorry, I don't know what's wrong with suburban corridor. Suburban corridor street, unless somebody objects. Okay, we gotta go back, and we gotta look at number 46, Main Strip. A lot of conversation. Somebody wanna start? Do what?
Does the only parcel with that designation? Does the only parcel with that designation? What's the only parcel? Is it traditional corridor dream? Or is it
Yes. Yeah, just 38 and 40.
38,
Yeah.
I certainly would support it being shorter.
But making it less imposing looking. I talked about the setbacks and step backs.
I don't remember how we talked about the imposing setbacks along the street corridor. We talked about creating setbacks, they were going to, I don't remember how we described the reaction of the code.
Yeah, again, this is analogous to the west of the village, where we talk about setbacks and setbacks. So, if you
Go back to the lead talking about.
yeah, if you were to, yeah, sorry, if you were to, well, I think, honestly, I think we need to go back and talk about regionalizing and setbacks. We're both this and the west side. I think people have seen the concept, maybe we're not even quite sure what that is. So, you're okay with the designation, the Pine City setback, is that fair? Yeah. 3 stories is fine.
Yep.
Okay. All right, we'll have a conversation. Okay. All right, I think we're done with that. Are you okay? Okay. All right. Future meetings. Joint committee meeting, August 23rd, tentative. Public information meeting with the planning board is August 31st. The public will be invited to attend. Town board hearing on the plan amendments is tentatively set for September 5th. It's not going to happen? Okay, it's not going to happen. All right, let's take C off the agenda. And the joint committee meeting on September the 13th is tentative. One more announcement to make before we get... Yeah, good. Just to expound on that a little bit, right now, the plan is for Lee to be in town that week in September, so he will be here on September 13th for that meeting. And then he'll be here on the 14th where we'll have, presumably have a hearing on the code information that we developed here. So that we would support that hearing. So that information meeting that we're talking about on August 31st, that'll be an opportunity to orient and introduce concepts, give folks a chance to consider what that means, and think a little about it, and then he'll be here for what we hope will be the first hearing on the code on the 14th. And he'll be here on the 15th as well, but he'll be here during that time frame. September.
So that's a public hearing of the planning board on September 17th.
Yes.
Okay. I was sitting here tonight looking at Dan, and I'm trying to figure out why people stick their nose in the top and not wearing glasses. Your eyes are better. Well, yes, time for public comment. Anybody want to go public comment? Sure, go ahead, Mary.
Watching the process of maybe I have little much as you know about the Amherst and everything that we did. And initially still was a crapshoot whether or not there's someone here in this room to represent them. So I'm a little disappointed by that. There were a couple of areas that had historic properties that are written up in our surveys that we're just ready to have knocked down and resolved. Those could change a lot of things. We're talking about environmental issues, including the floodplain, which is a large portion of our town, and the creeks, ditches, stormwater, and pretty much fell on deaf ears. These are things that need to be considered when we're talking about our future picture and the comprehensive plan and how development is going to happen in this town. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I liked your comments. My name is Thomas Frank. I'm glad that you included the Worthy Drive amendments for North Forest, Union, Cayuga Transit. It would be nice if you could extend it to Harlem Road, but also as far as sending a copy of the corridor connections to the two centers in the town of Amherst, but sending it to Clarence, that this would be a part of a project that, as far as the CFA, the Consolidated Funding Application, Friday at 4 o'clock is the deadline, and they're giving away some $800 million for projects, and that's why the town got the $162,000 for the statewide initiative. And what's really interesting is that the governor has signed two pieces of legislation. And Ramona, I really enjoyed your comments as far as the aquifer that I think you're on the committee as far as the Tonawanda Creek, as far as the erosion of the roadways down there, that these are long-term effects. And what the governor signed was, number one, was the Ellicott Creek, the natural waterway, and what is being proposed is what's being proposed is a watershed. We're a part of the Niagara River watershed, and as far as the watershed greenway of state parks and trails, it's 112.2 miles, and this is going to be a project similar to, they did it in Rochester for the Genesee River, and that they also did it for the Skajak Creek. I liked your comments as far as the historic significance that, and this is the bicentennial, as far as the bicentennial comprehensive plan for the 21st century. As far as some of the graphics, it would be nice to see what this place looked like when they did the Holland land purchase. That the Native Americans had no property rights, title, or interest. But you have, as far as the intersection of Main Street and Alki Creek, it has national historic significance. And that's why that as far as the relocation of the toll barriers out to Clarence, that's what's a part of this, and it has to go through that you're the lead agency, and we're looking at a $50 million 5-year, 5-phase development project, and it's a part of this. Because of the long-term negative impacts of suburban development on the infrastructure maintenance.
Okay, next.
Thank you. You're welcome. And it's also a part of the One Region Forward. You're welcome.
I assume this is not a joint meeting. I assume this is just the other committee, the planning part of the committee. I'd like to reiterate Mary Shapiro's comments about the lack of what I would call breadth of the committee's skill set. I think if this was a board of a commercial or a board of directors of some sort of commercial entity all looking for the maximization of profit, this would probably be a reasonably good representation of what you're doing. What I don't see here is information coming from the community at all, really. I also don't see any skill levels that resemble anything near engineering level type skills. I know how to buy that, I know how high to build that, but I see a very sort of, what looks to me a very mechanical process of determining how high things should be. I think you're rushing that. I think you need to look at the larger picture. You call things comprehensive and you do things specific. Doesn't make sense to me. I see this process as going forward and finishing at some specified time frame, but spending, we used to have a problem, you can have it fast, you can have it good, but you can't have it both. And so, when I used to work, at this point in time, we're going to get it fast. We're probably not going to get it good. You don't need to go so fast, you need to get it right, which means you have to get more skills, you have to get more points of view on this process before you go to the town board, before you even go to the planning board. It's not how high things are that's going to be in the end the most important thing. It's going to be how good things are, how well you've done this job. I understand this is a plan, an outline. This is not a plan to build. This is a plan to provide a framework on what may be allowed to be built based on zoning code. I understand all the potentialities here, but you need to look at the side effects, intended and unintended side effects of what's happening here. Very important. I'm not saying that you're not doing this. I'm just simply saying it's outside your point of view, your perspective, what you're seeing to get done. You have a force that's pushing you in a direction you have to resist, which is to get it done fast. You have to go through the force to get it done right. I don't see that happening. At least I don't see it on everybody's. I see it on some, but I see it on others going the other way. I know it's difficult to do in times the constraints of a project which essentially finishes up September 31st of this year in terms of what's getting paid from the state of New York. But that shouldn't be constraining either. It should be done right on a schedule that you pick, even if you're not getting paid by the state, because it's, in the end, over the time frame, the people of Amherst are going to pay the price of all this. I see a lack of real engineering topographical skill sets in here. I see, on the ones that Mary mentioned, that are missing there too. I'm not trying to downgrade anybody's work effort here. I know you're working hard. I understand the process of working hard. But it ain't, in my opinion, from what I'm seeing so far, enough for all the other 124,000 people plus more people becoming in Amherst over the time frame that this thing covers. And they need to be considered as much as the height of anything and what's going on. The edge effects on what happens around here scare me, because I think that's one of the places you're missing the most. But I thank you for doing the work you're doing, but I don't see it as being enough. And I don't think it's because you're not trying. I think your perspective is wrong. You started out looking at the wrong things when you started, and you're going to end up not doing it right. Sorry to say that, that's the way I feel. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. What we did tonight is going to be turned over to Lee now. And I'm going to have to presume that the majority of us are in agreement with what we've done. Obviously, not everybody agrees with everything, but at the same time, I think basically it's going to be. So, we as a committee are giving approval to what we've done so far tonight. Lee will structure it correctly.
We're going to ask him to drill down a little bit on some of the details, especially as we mentioned in and around the village. And so I expect that he'll add that information to the assessment and vision framework. So that'll change. This will be finalized to represent the decisions that were made tonight. And I would encourage you over the next several weeks, if you have questions about this, you have some more specific information that you're looking for related to the kinds of things we talked about tonight, shoot us an email. Do us a favor and shoot it to everybody. So, the whole committee is aware of and we'll push those on to Lee and try to get those things resolved and obviously so that when we come together in August, we'll have the result of the file for afterwards and consider. I would also mention that Gary and Kelly wrote today, I think, I think we gave you copies of their comments as well, so if you want to have a look at those, think about those a little bit, how it may or may not influence what you're thinking. And then finally, Tony provided a little article this week. I don't know if you wanted to talk about that for a moment, or we each had a copy of that as well.
Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting piece on the way we see communities developing. It relates back to, I think, a lot of what we're trying to say in the areas that we're creating here with multiple use and making walkable communities in a number of the areas. Which is self-explanatory, I think, to read and absorb.
It's very interesting.
I just have one request before we meet again. In reviewing the amendments to the comprehensive plan, there's mention of areas that will be transformed. It's on figure 6A. It says centers which are shown to transform are indicated in bold with an asterisk. And I'm hoping we can get some clarification on where those areas are or what that means. And should it be listed somewhere in the text? So if we could get an answer to that next time.
All right, I think we're adjourned for today. Thank you very much for your work.